like 5 minutes?
That sounds good. I would go ahead and get started now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, all, and welcome. My name is Gabriel Esehaya. I am an intern with the Temple Small Business Development Center. The Temple Small Business Development Center helps small businesses start and grow. We offer free one-on-one consulting and a variety of low to no cost webinars. We are proud to be part of the nationally accredited network of small business and development centers, which has about 1,000 networks across the United States of America. You are here this afternoon for a webinar on how to secure your website. A copy of the PowerPoint and the link to the recording will be sent to all the attendees. Being a webinar, all attendees have been muted. However, we always encourage you to drop your question on the Q&A or chat box. And without much ado, please allow me to welcome Ms. Jane, even as she takes over the floor for the presentation. Ms. Jane, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yes,
and thank
please.
you for inviting me. Huge thanks to the SBDC and Temple University for sure. Okay, so the first part of the segment will be a bunch of technical mumbo jumbo, but I've done my best to translate it into more English layman's terms. So the good stuff is in the middle near the end. So hang tight while we go through why hackers hack websites. What does it look like? How do you know? So I've already been introduced, but hi, I'm Jane Clark. I'm a co-founder and creative director of BrandSwan. I'm a multidisciplinary graphic designer, and I am also a front-end web developer. I've been designing websites since the 90s. Believe it or not, web technology has come a long way, and I've had over 19 years of actual in the field experience. So you can trust me to give you this information, I promise. Just a little bit about BrandSwan. We help small businesses, professionals, and nonprofits break away from the flock through story-driven branding, web design, and marketing. So that's really our specialty. So let's talk about how hackers access your website, best practices for website security, and the popular security tools and programs. Now, a lot of this will be geared towards WordPress because it is one of the most popular platforms out there, but a lot of the tips are good for if you just have a custom site done in HTML, CSS, or PHP, as well as just, again, some good tips for your local site. You have to start in your backyard first before you have to kind of develop good habits initially in order for this to kind of all come together. So how do websites get hacked? That's a big question that I get a lot of typically. Our clients in particular, their sites don't get hacked because we kind of add these security protocols, but we have noticed some clients getting hacked during a transition period where they're just not happy with their website, they want us to redo it, and then we find when we transfer it that it's not secure. And that's when we go in and do our magic. So the first way that hackers get into your site is through access control. What the heck does this mean? Basically, once the user is logged in legitimately, they then find vulnerabilities in your website to gain higher level access. So, and the official definition is access to a system resources. After a user's account has been authenticated and access to the system has been granted. So they got the username and password, they're in, or perhaps they logged in through a non-secure form on your website and they were accidentally given a different role other than subscriber. Anything at this point could have happened here. Now, every login point for your website needs attention. You have your domain login information, you have your hosting login information, your FTP where you can upload files, and maybe even a website login where you log into a portal so you can update your website that way. So you may have locked the front door, but if you left a window open, it still provides ample opportunity for a hacker to come in and kind of undo what you've done. So that's why it's really important to kind of hit all the points. Tactics can include brute force attacks, and this is where a hacker with bots and scripts will kind of go at your username and password login page and try a bunch of common combinations. So we'll go over what that looks like on the next slide. But they just keep at it until they eventually get the password. Phishing and malware. Hackers go out of their way to build very elaborate phishing pages and email schemes. And they're really designed to trick you into entering your username and password, thinking that you're actually on a real website. And lastly, your credentials can be intercepted if you're logging in on a non-secure network or a company has been hacked. Believe it or not, 32% of all data breaches involves phishing emails. So 32% of all data has tricked you into giving them your information. Kind of crazy, right? Here's an example of a phishing email. Now this looks super legit, right? So it says, claim your tax refund online. We identified an error and you're getting a refund in the amount of $419.95. The fact that it's a random amount makes it seem more authentic. If it just said a flat $500, that might raise some flags. So they have a very particular amount. They have the IRS. And when you click get started, you're taken to a web page where you enter your information, and now they have your social security number, they have your home address, they have everything they need in order to steal your identity, basically. So that's a lot of fun. So let's take a little bit of a poll here. Why do hackers hack websites? Why do they hack websites? I'm not sure if we have a poll running. Hopefully.
No, but I can make one really quickly.
That's okay, we can just go through it. So the first one is they want to hack because they want to disrupt your service. They want to steal your money. They want to steal valuable information, like your credit card information, your social security number. They want to provide black hat SEO services. And what that means is they are looking to increase their product rankings by hacking your site and linking to them. That's not, they call it black hat because that's not how Google prefers it. And it tries to kind of trick the system, but Google is usually smarter than they are because they can. Which one do you guys think is the most common? Feel free to just drop it in the chat if you're feeling bold. Because they can, because they want to provide black hat SEO services, because they want to steal information, or they want to disrupt your service. Yeah, because they can. Steal info, a lot of patterns here. Yeah. Uh-oh, we have an overflow. We have a landslide winner. Okay, you guys might be mad at me because there's a fifth option or sixth option, which is, hold it, all of the above. All of the above. You have people like, I'm sure you guys have heard of Anonymous. They're kind of like a political hacking group, but sometimes they do it just because they can. They do it to disrupt the service. So if there's a cause that they believe in and they want to prevent something that's anti that cause from happening, they're going to just shut the website down by bombarding them with requests until the website kind of breaks. So all of these are completely valid because they can, because they want to do the black hat tactics. They want to steal your information. The big one's number 3, because once they have your information, they can really do all the other stuff too. So the more visibility you have, the more increased risk. Who here has ever gotten a website message that says, hey, we could improve your SEO so hard. Your SEO is terrible. We can help you. How did they find you? Through SEO. So they find the things that you care about and then they message you about them. So if you're on the first page of Google, chances are you're really trying hard with your SEO visibility, right? And then they hit you right there by saying it isn't very good. And so that's a little bit of a scam too. If you do Google Ads, be careful, make sure your site's secure because Again, the more visibility, the increased risk. So just make sure that you do all this before starting those marketing initiatives. Very important. Any questions so far? I know we have kind of covered a little bit, but that is the general, that's how it works when they try to get access to your site. There is one more side of the things, which I'll cover in just a second, but any questions, raise your hand or go ahead and type in the chat. I'll wait a sec.
Jane, I think this isn't a question, but just a comment in case other people didn't see it in the chat. One of our attendees said, when you get one of those fake emails or posts like the one that you should from the IRS, you can also always check it in the URL. The URL is another good way to know if
yes, and sometimes they get crazy because it might be irs.tw.com or something. And so it looks really legit, but then there's these extra characters that shouldn't be there. That is a good indicator that the site is not real. There are your antivirus software as well will probably help that. They can hack the actual site. Oh, yes, everyone's an equal opportunist here. No one is immune. Big companies get hacked all the time. If the IRS got hacked, I don't think they tell us, honestly. I really don't. All right, let's move on. There'll be plenty of time for more questions, guys, if you have them. So the second way that hackers get into your site is through software and third-party vulnerabilities. And honestly, guys, this is everyday technology. Hackers take advantage of current web technologies to gain access to your site. And that's why your web software always needs updating. So if you have a WordPress site and you're like, oh gosh, I have to update it again, that's a good thing because they're taking care of any vulnerabilities that might exist, which happen all the time. Very common languages might have a vulnerability and then they just have to patch them really quick. So some examples of everyday web technology that can have vulnerabilities is the very server that your website's on. Your WordPress platform, including themes and plugins, could have a vulnerability. Web languages such as JavaScript, PHP, Java, sometimes they have something going on that makes it possible for hackers to exploit the script that way. And believe it or not, your own web browser can work against you if there's a vulnerability. Now, you will have zero control over any of this, really. The only thing you can do is update your site and just be aware of it. There have been some examples of sites getting hacked, which would be TransUnion. Does everyone remember that one? I mean, for the credit score company to actually get hacked is kind of terrifying. Adobe Creative Cloud. Think of some other companies that have been breached. A common hack. Here's an example of it. A website infected by a pharmacy hack. So if you go to your website in Google and type in, you know, I'll just use my website as an example, brandswan.com, your website looks fine, looks great. But if a user searches for Web Designer Delaware and then clicks on BrandSwan, what happens is it will redirect to a different page on the hosting account that looks like a pharmacy selling performance-enhancing drugs and Xanax and things of that nature. So that is an example of a black hat tactic where they kind of come into your site, put their content on it, and then link to really what they're looking to do. So that's why some people want to know, why is my website like a pharmacy? How does that help the hackers? Well, again, that sort of explains it. They're looking for your link to their site to give them credibility. Now, ultimately, that does hurt your SEO, but if you find it quickly, it's completely recoverable. It's okay. So that is an example of what that looks like. Companies who have been hacked this year alone. Colonial Pipeline paid a ransom. I will go into that in a second. Parler, Kroger, Bonobos, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn got hacked this year through a social engineering platform called Social Arcs. Social Arcs is a third-party service. So they had access to all of our data through them, and then they got hacked, exposing all those companies' information. Volkswagen and Audi as well. So let's talk about ransomware. ransomware is when hackers lock the information on your computer, on your server, and they demand payment for you to get it back. True story. Colonial Pipeline paid 2.3 million in Bitcoin to get their information back. That's the biggest thing that's happened this year, I think. Can you imagine? So they bought 2.3 million in Bitcoin. And they use Bitcoin because it's not traceable, because it's not really an official currency, right? Wild, wild stuff. So has your data been involved in a data breach? And if so, what company? I remember, I think Home Depot a couple of years back. I talked to you about Adobe. I've gotten my data breached dozens of times. Who here has gotten that? Any popular companies? Yeah, for sure. Target, yes, absolutely remember Target. Gosh, so many. You know, no one's immune to this. They go after small companies and big companies alike. Yeah, look at all those. Home Goods, Experian. Some people might think, well, I'm too small for people to go after. You know, but they find you from these data breaches. Yeah, medical insurance, Blue Cross, that's gigantic. You know, and you can't really do anything about it. That's the sad thing. Having you know, identity theft protection can certainly help with that. But I would give you the tools that you do have power over to hopefully prevent this from happening. Okay, so now that you know what can happen when a hacker hacks your site, let's talk about the best practices for website security. Let's move away from the scary stuff and into the stuff we have power over, right? So I always say you have to start local and form good habits. And you always want a unique password for every website you use. This way, if your information is leaked through a breach, they can't use the same username and password information on other popular accounts. Don't be shy, but how many people have the same password for a bunch of sites? Just say I, I, or me. Yeah. And this is where it really gets you guys, because they just will plug that information into a very popular site like Facebook or whatever, and now they have hacked your Facebook. Yeah. So I'm going to give you some action steps at the end of this, but trust me, you definitely want a unique password for every site. And you want to make the username different from your website name as well. So here, I am kind of going back and forth a little bit, might be a little confusing, but one is starting good habits and having a unique password for every site you log into. And the second one is, let's talk about the actual username password for your website you log into, right? Don't make the username the name of your website, because that's guessable, right? And make the password something really crazy and hard to guess. Symbols, just go crazy. Make them strong. And it's okay, you don't have to remember those, because you can use a password vault like LastPass, which is, there's a couple out there, but this one's my favorite. Then all you need to do is remember one password. And the trick is you can make it super long. So the example I have here is my cat Bob has white spot on paws. Like, you'll remember that, but it's like, 20 characters long, and that makes it a difficult password. So your master password can be something you can easily type in, but all the other passwords to all the other sites, make them completely random and just let the password autofill them in through LastPass. Anything can be hacked, honestly, Sandra. So yes, I have to do some research to see if they have been hacked. I actually haven't looked that up, but I'm gonna hope no. But because they're a security company, they probably have stronger security protocols than some companies. However, I'm sure there are hackers out there who want to just because they can, and it's a challenge. So time will tell. Time will tell. All right, guys, I'm calling everyone out here, including myself. Don't use common username and password combinations, because these are the ones that the bots will just try automatically. Admin password, And other popular passwords that were just last year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you can see picture 1, password, bunch of ones, the whole number gambit right there. So these are the most popular ones. And if you are guilty of using one of these, please say so. Step 1 to fixing a problem is acknowledgement. No, all right, Adam. Fair, fair. I will say I have been guilty of perhaps in the heat of the moment, I'm trying to download a park app in Newark, and I'm like, oh gosh, what's my password? 1111, you know, like I've done stuff like that, but I've gone back and changed it. You just have to trust me on that one. All right, guys, good job if you haven't been using these passwords. All right. So let's talk about the hosting account in general. So let's talk about the hosting account in general. You want to make sure that your web server is running the latest version of PHP. Just making sure you guys can still hear me because my headset just beeped off for just a second. Let me know if you can still hear me. Cool. Okay. So the biggest thing is what version of PHP your host is on. And you can find this out by logging into your cPanel. Be careful though, because if you upgrade your PHP version and your website programs can't run on that version, you're going to break everything. And then you'll have to downgrade again. So in the name of security, if your website's really old, you might have to just redo it. I'm sorry to say, but if you want to be secure, you got to embrace a new technology. If you're running a custom coded website, like not a CMS, something that someone built, consider using hosting scanners. Usually they're offered for a small monthly fee or a yearly fee. And they will just like kind of overwatch your whole server, making sure nothing really happens, or they'll catch it and quarantine it. You also want to limit file types that your users can upload through contact forms. One challenge of this might be a resume upload form. Just make sure that you're only accepting like a PDF, maybe a JPEG, and ban all the others. So that way there's no executable files that you're uploading to your account. Always use backups in case your website goes belly up. So if you get infected, you can just restore it and then secure it. So definitely have a backup. And the biggest thing I can say, and I made this in hot pink for a reason, is keep it updated. So you got to log in. We do it at least once a month. We go in, we update the WordPress database, update the plugins, and that way we know everything is secure. Make sure, put it on your calendar if you have to, because this is key. Websites get hacked a lot when they just sit there and they're not updated. That's one of the biggest things. All right, this is a fun one. The next thing you can do is install an SSL certificate. A little while ago, Google decided that it was going to give primary rankings to people who had SSL certificates. And when there wasn't an SSL, it would give you an error, like a big red, like this site is not secure. It's a little bit of a untruth, which I'll get into. So people were like, well, crap, we have to go ahead and install all these SSLs and make sure their website's secure. So SSL stands for Security Sockets Layer, which is why no one calls it that. And what happens is it encrypts the data during transit. So from your browser to the server and vice versa. It's a basic security measure for all websites, not just e-commerce. It comes free with some hosts. One of my favorite hosts is SiteGround, and you can install them for free. Or you can pretty much buy an SSL anywhere. You don't have to do it where your host is. You don't have to do it where your domain is. You could go to a completely different place and buy an SSL and then install it on your hosting account with a little technical prowess, if you will. But you don't have to buy it in any particular place. You'll often have to identify the owner, and that's how they give you that certificate. They say, hey, we talked to these people, they're verified, we trust them. These are optional, but they're really not optional. I would not recommend anyone make this optional. Your site will work, but another trick is that if you try to type your, if you click on a website, Google will default to HTTPS. So if you don't have that installed, they're going to get an error message. and then they're going to back out, right? Because they're not sure. Better be safe than sorry, so they don't visit your site. So get an SSL. It's really not that optional. I'll take questions on this in just a second. All right, we got a poll here. An SSL certificate prevents your website from being hacked. True or false? An SSL certificate prevents your website from being hacked. Yeah, you were like, this is too easy, right? Do you guys smell another trick coming? That's right, guys. It's false. Imagine that the SSL is a tunnel that your car is driving through. You're protected all around. But what happens when you get out of the tunnel? The information is once again at the mercy of other security measures. So really, it's just like the car in a tunnel taking the information and that secure path. But once they're at the browser, once they're at the server level, it stops. It no longer has any, anything to do. So it definitely helps, especially if you're sending using passwords back and forth on a contact form. You definitely want to have an SSL, but it cannot prevent your website from being hacked. It helps in other ways. Is security your responsibility? I added this because I know a lot of you might just be on Squarespace or Wix or a variety of other websites. So when you're using an online site builder like Squarespace, Wix, WordPress.com, not .org, that's different, Site Builder, even GoDaddy's Builder, they use their own custom platforms and they handle the security for you. So you don't have to worry about that side. Can they get hacked? Of course, but you don't really have anything to do. You just have to hope it works. If you have a custom coded website that ends in .html, PHP, etc., contact your web developer for an audit. The only thing I can recommend to you is making sure that you aren't using really old scripts. If your website hasn't been touched in 10 years, now's the time to redo that. Plus, it can be a heck of a lot cooler than it was 10 years ago, so I do it. They can help you and give you an audit on what version it is and what they can do to make it more secure for you. Now, popular CRMs like WordPress, Joomla, WooCommerce, security is your responsibility. So that means when you're kind of like a host, right? People coming to your house, you want to make sure that they're fed, that they're good, it's your responsibility if you are hosting your own site. Now, if you're processing payments online, you're subject to what is called PCI compliance. And this is when you're processing payments online. And what the heck is PCI compliance? It's a set of requirements that ensures that your company processes credit cards in a secure environment. It manages the security standards and improves the account security throughout the whole process. And the PCI stands for payment card industry, like Visa, MasterCard, etc. So there are some things that you need to do to make sure that you've done your due diligence. And there are 12 requirements. I'm going to briefly go through these. But what I will say, though, is that if you're interested and you're doing a lot of online data storing, and this is really what it's about storing the information. You can have a custom website that uses PayPal, for example, as your third party. And the only thing you're responsible for is the SSL tunnel. So you send them the information that's secure and then they take it from there. So at that point, you don't really have to worry about PCI compliance because PayPal will handle it for you. So some of the rules you have to follow is that you maintain a firewall. We'll go into that in some good plugins. That you don't use default system passwords, that you're protecting the data that you're storing. It's not just hanging out there insecure. That you are using SSL and transmitting that. I'm going to skip some of these things because, it's a lot to kind of digest, but you have to follow this requirement. Now, you have to ask, why would you not just use PayPal? Because they charge a higher fee, like 3%, right? But if you have your own, I think you're being charged much less than that. So it depends how many transactions you're processing. Like if it's over like $8,000, you might want to consider hosting it yourself for a cheaper fee. So you just kind of compare your options and what you're interested in doing. But yeah, once you are taking payments and using your own payment processor, that's when you have to be wary of these requirements. Yeah, I just completely just said that. So I'm ahead of the game here. Yeah, so you're responsible unless you're using the third party stuff. Okay, I'm gonna stop for questions at this time for that section. The next slides are gonna be very interesting.
Okay, Ms. Jane, I think we have 2 questions here on
Okay.
the Q&A. The first one is coming from Small Business Philly. The question is, traditional site more secure than CMX?
It depends what it does. Because you can have a very simple site that just uses HTML. And all browsers, no matter what code base you're using, spits it all out in HTML so that the browser can read it. But if you code it in that language and just design the looks of it, the chances of you getting hacked are probably pretty slim. They might go ahead and do like the pharmacy hack on you, again, because they can exploit server codes. So if your server is vulnerable, then they can hack that. The more your website can do, honestly, guys, the higher risk it is for getting hacked. So if you have cool like things happening like toggles and your website is out of animation, that just opens the door for it to age, and maybe the script that you're using has vulnerabilities. So it can all get hacked. But I would say CRMs probably get hacked more because they're the most popular at this point in time.
Okay, that's cool. The second question is coming from Adams David Jones. He said, can the hackers use another website will address to send you phishing? And if that's possible, how common is that?
Okay, we call it spoofing. Now, I'm a front-end web developer, and I will admit that sometimes web design and IT kind of blur a little bit. But what they do is they somehow spoof your IP address, or I'm sorry, your domain name, and they send it. Yeah, like I had a team member once was like, you know, Jane, are you sure you want me to buy $1,000 in iTunes gift cards? Because I had never asked her that before, right? And I'm like, wait, no, that wasn't me, you know? So communication super important, but I'm not entirely sure how they do that. That's a little bit above my head. I could probably look it up and let you know. But yeah, that's just crazy pants.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, just a quick one, you know, the same person, James David Jones, he was like, why do hackers use crypto when it can be hacked? That was one. And the second one is, does CRM also include Zoho?
Zoho is a CRM, but I would put it in the Squarespace site builder category because they have their own proprietary platform. Can Bitcoin get hacked? I guess. There's this whole thing called the blockchain. I don't quite know how to explain or know the ins and outs of, and I don't feel comfortable being an expert on that topic. But again, anything can get hacked. And I would think with Bitcoin, I would be more concerned about how the investors mess around with what they're worth. So that would be my only concern, really, not so much that they get hacked. It also depends on if the government makes it a controlled financial thing. So that's my unexpert opinion on that.
Okay.
But it is pretty untraceable at the moment, which is why hackers use it.
Okay. Sorry, he also said, not hackers, Bitcoin can be tracked. I think that was my bad. That was my mistake. You know, he meant Bitcoin, not hackers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
can Bitcoin be traced? I guess, but it's not regulated that way. So usually once you give it away, it's gone. You can't get it back.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, let's keep it going, shall we? All right. So I'm going to go over, now that we have some time, some of the best programs and tools to secure your WordPress site. Taking a look from Kelby, the only way your blockchain can get hacked is if they have your 12-word secret code that is only shown to you at the month's beginning once you sign up. Then it's gone forever. That's cool. Yeah. I'm not a Bitcoin expert, but I believe you, Kelby. You sound like you know what you're talking about. Yeah, but it's on. Yeah, it's gone as soon as you send it. All right. So here are the tools that I use. personally for our sites. We also host websites. So these are the same protocols that I would put on our entire server. So, and I'm sorry, this is for WordPress plugins because it's the most popular and there's just so many great ones. And again, the list is endless, but these are my favorite. The first one I want to go over is WordFence. It's full server security. It's great, but it takes a lot of resources to keep it running. So I've defaulted to not using that one unless I have concerns that a site is being targeted. And what does WordFence do? Well, you can perform virus and malware scans on it. It will do that regularly and alert you if something weird is happening. It might say, hey, this theme that you downloaded, it doesn't match the theme in the database. So this might have gotten hacked because it doesn't match what the default theme is. So it's pretty smart. You can also use it for dual authentication, which is a big way you can prevent your website from being hacked. Now, I have a team of people, and I have to say dual authentication is a bit annoying, but it is absolutely a great way to prevent your site from being hacked. So WordFence, I think it gives you a pick of different authenticators. So you could use Google, for example. I think even LastPass has one. So what happens is when you try to log in, it will send a message to your phone and say, hey, is this you? And you hit yes, and then you logged in. So you have to have your phone near you. But again, very solid to use that dual authentication. Now, again, there are other plugins in WordFence if you just want the dual authentication. But again, these are my favorite. If you aren't using dual authentication for whatever reason, Loginizer is a great tool. Now, I like Loginizer because it limits login attempts against brute force attacks. And what it does is once someone enters their username and password, like, and you could pick the number 5 times, it locks them out. So now they can't keep trying passwords. And all they need is time, right, to be able to hack it. So if you prevent them from keep spamming, then it's going to take like a million years for them to log into that thing. And then, you know, a million years, we won't be here anymore. So WP hide login, this is a good one. And again, there are others. But what happens is when you log into WordPress, for example, I'm going to go ahead and do a live example here. Boop. When you log into WordPress, you typically log in with WP admin, right? And it takes you to a login page. Now, when you hide URL, what happens is you change the default URL, like so. And now they can't even get to the username and password because they don't know this URL that you had changed it to. So that's a really great way, again, to prevent people from the brute force attack stuff. It can get pretty wild. Last but not least, I like to use Yoast because it allows you to show and hide content from search engines. There are free and paid options for all of these, and I'm going to go through a couple of them so you can really see them in action. My only recommendation is that some of these features do overlap. And if you aren't using WordPress, you can Google other resources. So if you're using like Magento or something, they will have their recommendation for plugins. And my recommendation would be only choose a plugin if it has 4+ star reviews and at least 1,000 of ratings. And I'm going to go ahead and do a real life example for you guys with WordPress. Please hold. All right. So we're going to go ahead and log in here. And I'm going to take a look at our plugins. Now, our site's a bit beefy, so your website might not look like this. We have lots of plugins that we use, and you'll see that we have a lot of common ones here. We got our Yoast, we have our Loginizer. Now, Loginizer, when you check the settings, it's very simple, plug and play. So you come down here, and you can see the file permissions. It's quite cool. Down here, the brute force. And basically, you just decide how much, when do I want to lock them out and for how long? You can make this 1,000 minutes, they can never log in again, right? Or you can say, oh, we'll do 10 tries. So you can adjust these and when the reset is. And you can also get notified if someone does get locked out. You can blacklist certain IP addresses and whitelist. Some of these are, you can also change error messages so that make sense to you. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do. It also has two-factor authentication, but they want you to pay for it. Now the prices themselves are actually not bad. I think this one's like 80 bucks a year, right? 90 bucks a year. If you're just a personal person, that's me today. You can pay the $24 one if you just need one site. Sometimes these can add up, but I would say these pro features are very important. So definitely take a look at that. Go back here. Recaptcha, you guys know about this. Usually other forms handle it, your theme might handle it, but again, this just allows you not to get spammed through contact forms. A lot of these settings are just plug and play. And what I mean by that is you just activate it and it's kind of set already. You can kind of rest easy knowing that at least people can bombard your site and try to hack it. It also will help with the security because as the spam bots attack your site, it slows down your site because you're trying to access it. That's what a denial service is. So there's a lot of ways that this helps. Let's talk about the WordPress hide URL. Now again, Loganizer does have that, you just have to pay for it. So that's why we sometimes use 2 plugins for our clients to kind of do the same thing. The next one is the WPS hide login. It's down here at the bottom. It's actually under settings general, and you can change a login URL right here. And if they get it wrong, you can redirect them to a new URL, which is a 404 page, basically. Or if you have a lot of employees, you can say, hey, if you can't get in, please contact Bob at blah, 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 right? So you can make this work for your team. And yeah, so a very simple plugin, but it helps tremendously. Another plugin I'm going to go over is not on the list, but because our host in particular gives it to you, and it's called SG Optimizer. This is like a caching system, an optimizer, all in one. Big fan of it. And the one thing I want to point your attention to is the HTTPS. So your host might not do this on default for you. It depends on what host you're in. But at some point, when you do install your SSL certificate, you need to let your website pull from the SSL. And in order to do this, you need to enable it. So one plugin I recommend is actually called SimpleSSL. And if you Google it on your, I like how Google is just like the new search term for pretty much anything. So if you were to go to your plugins and add a new one and search for SSL, really simple SSL comes right at the top here, 5 million active installations compatible with your version of WordPress. Awesome. And you can just install it and activate it. Very cool. And when you do that, you can tell it that you want it to use HTTPS, and you want to make sure that you're enforcing the HTTPS. And what that means is, going back to my thing, is that it fixes the insecure content, because if you have a secure site, but you're linking to something that isn't secure, it simply will not load. So if you're having some weird issues where you added an SSL and now part of your website isn't loading, that's because somewhere in the URL, there's still an HTTP and it's being blocked by the browser. Fun, right? So definitely check on that. You want to make sure that you're securing the content. Sometimes it's called enforced HTTPS, where it will automatically rewrite all the URLs to be secure. Now, after you check that and you're still not getting something to load, that means that source is not secure and it won't load on your site if you want yours to be secure. Any questions on that part? So make sure your SSL is installed and that you enable the HTTPS in your site and then forcing the HTTPS, or it's called fixed and secure content. That's a big one. Okay. All right, cool. I'm going to move on. There's a lot of great tools out there. If you need something in particular, feel free to email me. For example, let's say you're not a big fan of WordFence and you want a second option, I can help you with that. But these are really great options. Yoast isn't necessarily a security plugin, but it does help you manage content that you don't want to be seen. So for example, let's say you have a lead capturing page and you want someone to give their name and their email to gain access. You probably don't want that page to be shown in the search engines, right? Because you want to make sure you capture that lead information. So you could tell all the search engines not to index that page, and the legit ones will oblige, but obviously bots won't. Okay, let's talk about action steps, guys, because this was a lot, right? This is a lot to know. So now what? Let's talk about a website security action plan. Step one is I want you guys to strengthen your passwords across the board. It can take a little while, especially if you have like a ton of sites, but as you log in, remember, let me change that password. So I'd install LastPass right away and get that going. Then you only need to remember one password. Two, you probably can't see what I'm doing here. Two, check your security settings on your server. You might need to upgrade your server, like the PHP, and install that SSL if you don't have one already. Step three, if accepting and storing online payments, make sure that you're following PCI compliance. Step four, install the programs and tools that work for you that protects your site. And last but not least, keep them updated. Go in every month if you have to and just keep those plugins updated and you'll be pretty good to go. Questions? We have about 10 minutes left, so feel free to ask me them. And I've also included references as well. So if you wanted to read a little bit more about things, you have access to that too. Adam, I think you might have some technical experience under your belt. Should I always update JavaScript when I get notices? Is it the JavaScript, the Java on your computer? Or is it like what, where, how are you getting your notices? Okay, yeah. I think that's, I don't even think you have to have it on there actually. You can probably uninstall it, but yes, I would definitely upgrade it. Keep it updated or uninstall. Are you a coder perchance or a programmer?
Okay. Even as we keep dropping our question on the Q&A, I will be posting a 30-second survey link about today's webinar. Please, we cherish your feedback, even as it helps us to improve our services to you at a low cost. So kindly take your time and please help us to fill out the survey link I'm posting now. And even as it's also required by our funders. Thank you.
Thank you.